Hey everybody, Nick here. As you might have noticed, I've been doing some Advent of Code streams, and something that people have asked me is how this part works. So, how can you make a base class so that you pass in the day and then you get your inputs? Because as you can tell here, I refer to input, and that is the raw string for what you have to solve. So if you look at this here, this is my solution base class, and it's just a simple helper function. Um, the way this works, that you have to specify base with a value, you cannot specify it without a value, it will give an error, is because it does not have a default constructor. So in C#, when you make a new class, like the day6 here, you see this is a parameter-less constructor, so you can just new it up without having to pass anything in. If you don't specify a constructor for a class, this is the default behavior that will be generated automatically, but you won't see it. So there will always be a default constructor without parameters. But if you instead specify one yourself, like here, you can see it is a new solution. This is the constructor, and it has a parameter for the day, and there isn't one without a parameter. Then the default constructor won't be created. So this is how that part works. This way you have a base class that you can create, like so. It says inherit from this base class, and when you call the base, you are forced to specify which day that is. And what this thing does is it will download your unique input. To do that, it will need your cookie. It does that by expecting a file called session.txt in your bin folder. You can extract that from Chrome. So if you open up the DevTools, when you go to the Advent of Code site, you can check cookies and see the session cookie there. And if you put that in a text file, this piece of code will be able to do that. So what it does when you run the code, when your parent class gets constructed, this base constructor gets called, and what it does is it sets the date, and then it calls this getInput method. And what it does is it tries to look for a cached file. So it tries to see if you already downloaded the file, not to hammer the Advent of Code servers. If it does, it just reads it from disk. If not, it will send a new request to the Advent of Code website and download that specific day input. Since today they ask you to set a header so that they can identify or contact you, so I have put in my socials here as the user agent, so that Eric Wastel who makes Advent of Code challenges, can see my requests and sees that I'm not abusing or hammering the site. So basically it just sets a cookie with the name of session, so that's also the key that you need to look for in the DevTools when you try to find it, and it just does a download string, which is a basic GET request. So that is how that works. So then if you implement this solution, and I'll just put the link in the description so that you can just copy paste this, you can create this class file, and when you instantiate it, you will have an input variable that you can use that will have the actual input to solve. So that makes things really easy. Besides that, you might want to make some additional extension functions. So for me, something that I use a lot is this two lines method. It basically lets you take your input and just split it by line. And I do it in this way so that even if I manually copy paste something, the inputs that you get from the site will all be Unix based. So we'll just have these \n for the new line character. On Windows you will have \r/n. So this supports both, and will just remove the empty lines, which is good to know, because if you expect empty lines to be there, this one will strip them out. So if you don't want that behavior, make sure to adjust that accordingly. Then you have something where like every line will have a number. It's an input that happens a lot. So I have some small helper functions to just turn an array of strings into a list of int32s. And there's also a try, so that it will just try and just add a null if it doesn't work. So you will have nullable ints which will just return a null if it couldn't parse it, so that it doesn't throw an error. Another thing that might be useful is this with indexes, which basically just converts a list of values into a pair where it has the index plus the value, which might be useful. And the other one that I use a lot are these as helpers. And basically what this lets you do, let me see if I have it here. I think I used it on day 4. Yeah, you can see it here as. And what it does, it's if you have like linked up your input and you end up with 2, 3, or 4 values in an IEnumerable or array, you can then process that. So you can get a function that you supply where you parse out those strings into the objects that you want, and then you can have a strong type result, so that you have named values that you can easily code against it instead of addressing them by index. So that is basically the stuff that I use for Advent Code to make my life a little bit easier. I've been asked a few times, like, how does this base constructor setup work? So I figured let's just make a quick video and show you. I'll be sure to put some code in the description links so that it can help you too. Bye bye.